of student life. I'm your host, Iman. If you are tuning in from a quiet corner of a crowded campus library, welcome back to your hostel after a grueling late night lecture, or sitting in your car trying to catch your breath before your next commitment, welcome! We are glad you are here. Today, we are tackling a topic that is absolutely crucial, yet often whispered about in the corners of lecture halls or hidden behind closed bedroom doors. Mental health matters, supporting students' well-being. Let's be honest for a second. With rising academic pressure, social media anxiety that acts as a 24-hour comparison trap, and the looming heavy stress of an uncertain future, students today are carrying an emotional load that is heavier than almost any generation before them. We are expected to excel academically, build a flawless professional network, look happy on camera, and maintain perfect mental stability all at once. But something I have to give. Joining me today to unpack this complex issue are two incredible guests who see this reality from two very different yet equally vital angles. First, we have Dr. IRSYAD, a clinical psychologist who has spent over a decade counseling university students through their darkest moment. Welcome, Dr. IRSYAD.
Thank you, Iman, for inviting me today. It's wonderful to be here. This conversation is incredibly timely and necessary.
And we also have Mika, a final year student and the head of the peer support network at her university, who is right there in the trenches with her peers every single day. Thanks for joining us, Mika.
Hi Iman, glad to be here. Ready to share the student perspective on this.
Fantastic! Let's dive straight into the deep end. Dr. IRSYAD, from a clinical psychologist standpoint, it feels like we aren't just dealing with a few stressed out individuals anymore. It feels like student mental health across the board has reached an absolute boiling point recently. When you look at the data and the faces coming into your clinic, what are we missing? What is driving this shift?
Thank you, Iman. That is a golden question. What we need to understand is that the student experience has changed significantly. Success is no longer measured simply by academic achievement. Today's students are facing what many experts describe as a perfectionism epidemic. They are always exposed to the standard image of success on social media, while at the same time facing the financial pressures and a competitive in the job market. When you mix academic pressure with a lack of sleep and poor coping mechanism, it creates a perfect storm for anxiety and depression. It is not that students are less resilient or softer today, but the pressure cooker is much more hotter, meaning that they have to face a much more challenging environment.
Wow, the pressure cooker is hotter. That is such a powerful, heavy image, and honestly, it hits close to home. It highlights that the environment itself has become more volatile rather than the individuals being less resilient. Mika, I want to bring you in here. Does that image resonate with you? When you take a look at your own daily life and talk to the peers around you, what does this hotter pressure cooker actually look like on the ground?
Oh, absolutely. Dr. IRSYAD really hit the nail on the head. For most students, stress isn't just about getting one bad grade. It's the combination of many pressures happening at the same time. We are trying to maintain a high GPA, secure internship, work part-time to cover expenses, and still have some kind of social life. For example, I recently spoke to a student who attends classes during the day, works at a cafe in the evening, and then stays up late finishing assignments. After a while, he started feeling exhausted all the time and struggled to focus in class. Stories like that are actually very common among students. A lot of us feel like we are constantly trying to keep up with expectations from university, families, and even ourselves. It's like running on a treadmill that's moving just a little too fast. And the hardest part is that many students don't feel comfortable talking about their struggle when they look at social media and see everyone sharing achievements, awards, or exciting opportunities. It can seem like everyone else has everything under control. In reality, many students are facing the same challenges but simply are not talking about them.
That is so incredibly real, Nika. It's the exhausting act of wearing this beautifully crafted mask of perfection, while underneath the surface, things are quietly fractured. We smile in class. We say, "I'm fine," when people ask, but mentally, we are running on empty. And that brings us to a really critical point in this conversation. How do we see past the mask? If the pressure is this high, we have to become better at looking out for one another. Dr. IRSYAD, let's speak directly to the friends, roommates, or even the lecturers who are listening right now. What are the subtle, quiet warning signs that a student's mental health is deteriorating? Because, as Mika pointed out, it's not always someone crying out for help or breaking down in tears in public, isn't it? It's often much quieter than that.
Exactly, Iman. Mental health struggles are often quiet. One of the most red flags or common warning signs is social withdrawal. For example, a student who is usually active may suddenly stop attending lectures, miss group meetings, or become unresponsive to messages. Another key indicator is noticeable change in their normal behavior, such as irregular sleeping patterns, significant weight loss or gain, or a sudden drop in academic performance. You might also notice emotional change like getting easily irritated, mood swings, or emotional detachment. May also suggest a student is experiencing difficulties. It's about noticing the change in a person's usual pattern.
It really comes down to paying attention to the deviations from the norm, rather than waiting for a massive crisis. Mika, in your role as a peer supporter, you are interacting with students in casual, everyday settings where clinical symptoms might look a bit different. How do you spot these signs in your friends? Is it easy to miss them amidst the chaotic noise of a normal college life?
It is incredibly easy to miss if you are not paying attention. In college, we often joke about being stressed, surviving on coffee, staying up until 4 a.m. to finish assignments, or skipping meals because we are too busy. The problem is that sometimes those jokes are really actually covering up something more serious. For me, the warning signs usually show up the small change. Maybe a friend who is normally active in class suddenly stops participating. Maybe they start missing lecturers, avoiding group projects, or turning down invitations to hang out. I have also noticed things like messy rooms, poor personal hygiene, or someone constantly saying they are tired no matter how much they sleep. Sometimes it's the thing they say that worries me the most. Comments like, I'm not good enough, everyone else is doing better than me, or what's the point anymore may sound casual, but they can be signs that someone is really struggling. That's when I know it's important to check in and not just assume they are having a bad day.
It is fascinating and honestly a bit heartbreaking how we use humor as a shield, turning severe burnout into a relatable meme just to make it through the week. But when those subtle shifts happen, when the jokes start sounding a bit too real, or a roommate pulls away into their own space, the real challenge begins. It can feel incredibly awkward to bring it up. You worry about stepping over a line, or making them feel defensive, or seeming intrusive into their personal life. Mika, walk us through that moment. How do you actually initiate that conversation without making things weird?
It can definitely feel awkward at the first because nobody wants to invade someone's privacy. But I have learned that showing genuine concern is usually better than staying silent. Of asking something very direct like, are you depressed? I try to start with simple observation. For example, I might say, hey, I have noticed you have not been yourself lately, or you seem a bit stressed these past few weeks. How have you been doing? That makes the conversation feel less intimidating. I remember checking in on a friend who had been missing classes and avoiding our group chats. At first, he said everything was fine, but after talking for a while, he admitted that he was overwhelmed and didn't know who to talk to. That conversation didn't solve all his problems, but it helped him feel supported. The biggest lesson I learned as a peer supporter is that you don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to fit someone's life one conversation.
Sometimes the most helpful thing you can do is listen without judging.
Be present and remind them that they don't have to go through it alone.
Wow, let them know they aren't invisible. That phrase gives me chills. Mika, because at the root of so much emotional distress is that profounding feeling of loneliness. The belief that you are entirely alone in a crowded room, and your point about just shutting up and listening is so vital. We often feel this immense pressure to be amateur therapists and have all the right answers, when really the other person just needs a safe space to unload. Dr. IRSYAD, what's your professional take on Mika's approach? When a student finally pulls up the courage to open up to a peer, a parent, or an educator, what are the absolute landmines we need to avoid saying?
Thank you, Iman, for asking the question. The most effective approach is to respond with empathy and validation. It is important to avoid dismissive comments or toxic positivity. Statements such as, just cheer up, USD is not that difficult, or you should be grateful for what you have, can unintentionally invalidate a person's feelings and discourage them from seeking further support. Instead, acknowledge their emotion by saying something like, "That sounds very overwhelming, and it is understandable that you feel stressed." This creates a safe and supportive environment for open communication.
That concept of toxic positivity is so dangerous because it builds an internal wall of shame. When we tell someone to just look on the bright side, we are essentially telling them that their pain is inconvenient or invalid. Thank you for clarifying that, Dr. IRSYAD. Let's shift gears a bit now. We've mapped out the depth of the problem, and we know how to spot the cracks before they become fractures. Now, let's talk about solutions, preventions, and tangible survival strategies. We need to talk about actionable tools. Dr. IRSYAD, for the student listening who feels the pressure rising right now, what are some practical, daily, realistic tools they can incorporate into their routine to manage their mental well-being before they hit a breaking point?
I strongly recommend adopting what I call micro habits. When individuals feel overwhelmed, large goals such as exercising for an hour or meditating for 30 minutes can seem unrealistic. Therefore, it is often more effective to start with small, manageable action. First, follow the 5-minute rule by setting aside just 5 minutes each day to take a break from screen, practice deep breathing, or performing light stretching exercise. Second, prioritize sleep hygiene. Quality sleep is essential for maintaining both physical and mental well-being. Students should avoid using electronic devices at least 30 minutes before bedtime. For the third, develop the ability to set boundaries by learning to say no when necessary. Many students feel pressured to participate in every activity, project, or social event. Protecting personal time and energy is an important aspect for self-care.
Microhabits, I absolutely love that because it removes the intimidation factor. When someone is drowning in assignments, asking them to add a massive self-care routine to their to-do list just causes more anxiety. But 5 minutes? Protecting a boundary that feels achievable. It is about small, intentional victories. Mika, let's bring this down to earth. You are balancing your own high-stakes final year of studies, running a major student network, and dealing with the everyday chaos of life. How do you personally put these tools into practice? What does your own mental health toolkit look like when the week gets overwhelming?
For me, it's all about setting boundaries and making time to recharge. As students, it's easy to feel like we should be working every minute of the day. But I have learned that constantly being productive isn't sustainable. One thing I do is intentionally disconnect. At the end of the day, I have set a personal rule that after 9 p.m., my study desk is closed. No textbook, no assignment, and no checking university emails. That time is for me to relax and reset. I also schedule what I call do nothing time in my calendar. It sounds funny, but it really helps. Sometimes I will watch a show, play a game, go for a walk, or simply sit outside and listen to music. Giving myself permission to rest without feeling guilty has made a huge difference to my stress level. Another thing that helps is staying connected with people I trust. When I'm feeling overwhelmed, I will talk to a friend, a family member, or someone from our peer support network instead of keeping everything to myself. I have realized that sharing your struggles doesn't make you weak, but it actually helps you manage them better. And honestly, one of the biggest lessons I have learned is knowing when to ask for help. I used to think requesting an extension on an assignment meant I was not capable enough. Now I understand that if you are genuinely struggling, communicating with your lecturer and asking for support is simply good time management and self-care. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is admit that you need a little help.
That shift in mindset regarding extensions and asking for help is absolutely massive, Mika. It reframes asking for support not as a failure, but as a strategic choice to preserve your sanity and the quality of your work. But let's broaden the scope here. While personal toolkits and micro habits are fantastic, we cannot put the entire burden of mental health solely on the shoulders of the individual student. We have to talk about institutional responsibility. Dr. IRSYAD, almost every campus has a counseling center or student support services, yet there is still a massive gap. Students are often terrified or deeply hesitant to walk through those doors. Why do you think that barrier exists? And how can institutions strive to really bridge that gap?
Thank you, Iman. There are two major barriers. The first one is stigma, and the second one is accessibility. Many students fear that seeking counseling service will negatively affect their academic record, even though counseling sessions are completely confidential. Others may encounter long waiting period before they can access support services. Educational institutions must move beyond a reactive approach and adopt a more proactive model. Mental health education should be integrated into the curriculum, and lecturers should be trained to recognize signs of distress and refer students to appropriate support services. In addition, universities should expand their support system by offering their peer support program, digital mental health resources, and group counseling sessions, providing students with a wider range of options beyond traditional one-to-one counseling.
You hit the nail on the head, IRSYAD. A 3-week waiting list during a crisis is practically a lifetime for a student who is struggling today. It is clear that a systemic overhaul is needed, one that moves away from just reacting when a student breaks down and instead moves toward creating a culture that actively prevents the breakdown from happening in the first place. It takes a blend of institutional policy, faculty compassion, and grassroots support. As we begin to wrap up this incredibly powerful conversation today, I want to give space for some final, direct messages to our listeners. Mika, let's start with you. If you could speak directly to a student listening right now, someone who might be sitting alone in their room, feeling completely overwhelmed by their workload, drowning in stress, and feeling like they are totally invisible, what is the one thing you want them to hear?
I would want students to know that their value is not based on their GPA, achievements, or what they post on a social media. it's okay to struggle sometimes. You don't have to handle everything on your own. Talk to a friend, a lecturer, and family member, or someone you trust. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness, but it shows strength. There are people who care about you and want to support you. The first step may feel difficult, but you don't have to face it alone.
Asking for help isn't giving up. It's choosing to survive. That's what we have to say to them. The reason and truth to anchor ourselves to. Thank you for that, Nika. My message is simple. We need to redefine what success truly means. Academic achievement should never come at the expense of an individual's well-being. To parents, I encourage you to pay attention to not only your children's grades, but also to their emotional health. To educators, lead with empathy, understanding, and compassion. To society, let us continue fostering open conversations about mental health until the stigma surrounding it is completely eliminated. That, Nika. And Dr. IRSYAD, what's your final thought? What's your call to action for society, parents, and educators regarding students' well-being?
My message is simple. We need to redefine what success truly means. Academic achievement should never come at the expense of an individual's well-being. To parents, I encourage you to pay attention not only to your children's grade, but also to their emotional health. To educators, lead with empathy, understand, and compassion. To society, let us continue fostering open conversation about mental health until the stigma surrounding it is completely eliminated. Mental health is just as important as physical health and deserves equal attention, care, and support. Mental health is health.
Mental health is health, period. There is no separating our emotional well-being from our physical existence, and it's time for our institutions and families reflected that. Dr. IRSYAD, Mika, I cannot thank you both enough for your time, your absolute vulnerability, and the profound practical insights you shared with us today. You've given us a lot to think about, and more importantly, you've given us tools to take care of ourselves and each other. To every single person listening to this episode, whether you are on campus, commuting, or resting, please take a breath. Grant yourself some grace today. Check in on your friends, send that quick text just to say hello, establish those boundaries, protect your sleep, and remember with absolute certainty that your value as a human being matters far more than any exams, assignment, or grade ever will. If you or someone you know is struggling right now and needs immediate confidential support, please don't wait. Open up our show notes right now. We have listed free 24 hours helplines and campus resources that are there for you. You don't have to walk this path alone. Until next time, look out for one another. Stay mindful and take care of yourself. Bye!
I just had to let you know you're